Thank you so much. We are now launching our second topic. We'll be talking through national cloud now. The program committee is made out of Alessandro de Losa, Babylon Cloud, Roberto Bondavalli, Cloudfire, Alberto Szakvary from Equinix. Now, they've decided to all attend on stage, so I leave the floor to them.
Buonasera a tutti, non so se mi sentite. Buonasera, sono Roberto Bondavalli.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Bondavalli from Cloudfire, and I do deal with the development of all technologies and services, open source technology, OpenStack, and others. So the whole of the cloud world. And here with me, Alessandro. Hello, I'm from Babylon Cloud. I've been dealing with cloud for the past 10 years, and I've actually founded Babylon Cloud myself. Alberto Szakvary. Hello, I am from Equinix, and I do welcome cloud providers into my data center. And thank you so much for this kind invite to moderate the session. And Alessandro, what's coming next? So we'll be talking through national cloud. It has become very up to speed very recently, also after the new implementations allowed by ministry. And so let me share a quick video with you, and grab your smartphone as we'll be running a poll in a moment. So get your smartphone ready.
L'Agid, Agenzia per l'Italia Digitale, nel 2012. L'Agid ha il compito di garantire la realizzazione degli obiettivi dell'agenda digitale italiana e contribuire alla diffusione dell'utilizzo delle tecnologie dell'informazione e della comunicazione. Il primo direttore dell'agenzia, Agostino Ragosa, nel 2013 annunciava: attualmente nella pubblica amministrazione centrale e locale esistono migliaia di CED che costano molto e nella maggior parte dei casi sono inefficienti, isolati e non sicuri. L'obiettivo è quello di ridurre le strutture di data center a 30-40 unità. Nello stesso anno il governo nominava il primo commissario per l'agenda digitale nella persona di Francesco Caio, che si dava come priorità l'identità digitale, l'anagrafe digitale unificata e la fatturazione elettronica. Nel 2016 però la priorità del nuovo commissario Diego Piacentini diventava la realizzazione dei data center pubblici italiani e la realizzazione del cloud della PA. Il commissario Diego Piacentini avvertiva che per la trasformazione digitale sarebbero servite competenze, investimento, tempo, dedizione e costanza, facendo presagire tempi lunghi per una trasformazione comunque necessaria. Nel 2019 Luca Attias, al termine del suo mandato come commissario straordinario per la trasformazione digitale, in una intervista su Wired diceva: «Non sono riuscito ancora a produrre risultati tangibili, concreti e quantificabili nella realizzazione delle infrastrutture digitali. I data center o sedicenti tali delle amministrazioni restano troppi e spesso di infima qualità». Oggi, a differenza di ieri, si parla del problema nelle stanze della politica che conta con una consapevolezza diversa, ma il problema è ancora irrisolto. È infine nel 2021 che il cloud nazionale prende nuova forma, con la nomina del Ministro per l'innovazione tecnologica e la transizione digitale Vittorio Colao, che a settembre annuncia un bando per il Polo Strategico Nazionale del Cloud entro la fine dell'anno e il 24 novembre ribadisce l'obiettivo di migrare verso soluzioni cloud almeno il 75% delle PA italiane entro il 2026, al contempo valorizzando le in-house regionali d'eccellenza.
Oggi nel parlare
So while we speak through national cloud, let's talk through the standards that could be adopted for national cloud purposes. And how are we approaching it, and what can we do about it? So within this context, I would love to introduce a poll as we're gathering your opinion on a number of topics that are relevant to us when it comes to decision-making in a national cloud decision. So through this Slido.com, you may refer to this number below, as well as the QR code. You may access a poll page where you'll be able to share your answer. First question is, what advantages do you envisage with a cloud based on open source standards? So the possible answers are cost, interoperability, possibility to intervene with the code, freedom to lock in vendor, anything that comes to mind. Let's see. Well, they're changing very rapidly.
Ma sembra già di vedere che l'interoperabilità sia vista insieme alla libertà come assolutamente.
So interoperability is indeed the most important one. Nobody's mentioning the cost. So it looks like the people here, I see the only advantage as interoperability, or perhaps everybody believes that is going to be free of charge. That is possible also. Well, let's see. Freedom from vendor lock-in. We are capturing some answers. Let's see. Let's carry on. Let's see if there's anybody else who's suggesting something different.
Vi proponiamo allora una seconda domanda.
So we do have a second question here for you. What disadvantages do you envisage with a cloud based on open source standards? Uncertainty of the roadmap, possibility of abandonment of the project, dependence on the community, other. Lack of support from vendors. Well, it looks like uncertainty and lack of support, they stand out as important. We have very mixed answers here. And many of you have also selected other. But this is still interesting. As open source, it means that we can create an economic engine for the country, especially when people are complaining lack of support from vendors. It means that you can actually enhance a local economy around this. We heard about the hegemony from United States or China with Alibaba Cloud. So it's interesting to see. There can be some food for thought here. I'd love to carry on and see if there's any piece of advice that we've been given. Well, the fact that some of you have actually selected other, that's very interesting. So, around topic of open source and cloud, we're now introducing a speech from MacArthur, one of the founders of OpenInfra Foundation.
Hi, I'm Jimmy MacArthur with the OpenInfra Foundation. Thank you to Salotto 2021 for the opportunity to speak at this event. I'd like to talk about the community that we've built around open source and around public cloud. Over the last 6 years, I've had the pleasure of watching our community grow to 110,000 people from over 180 countries and 700 organizations. And together, we have worked to build the de facto open source cloud standard that you probably know as OpenStack. And this is what we think is going to be the best solution for cloud nausea in LA. And let me tell you a little bit more. We build our communities through what we call the 4 opens: open source, open design, open development, and what I think is most important, open community. And in doing that, people seek out the OpenInfra Foundation to help build their open source projects and their open source communities that run in production. Through our events and through our projects, we work together to build all of open source, open infrastructure, and hopefully meet the needs of all of our public cloud providers, all of our private cloud providers, and everyone in between. Together with over 80 organizations, we have built this community. Cloudfire is a massive part of this, and we're so thankful for the invitation to come on and speak with you all today and to talk about Cloudfire's incredible work in the public cloud space and how they, together with our other 80 member organizations, have worked to create these outstanding open source projects that we hope will be the solution for cloud in ASEAN ally. We're seeing massive momentum in the public cloud space. In the last year, we've seen a 66% growth with 25 million cores of OpenStack in production. That's incredible. And data sovereignty has given rise to the need for an alternative to hyperscaler public clouds. And this is where Cloudfire and open source come into play. And we hope that we can help Italy achieve 75% of public office records going to the cloud in 2025. Now, you've heard enough about me. Let me help make the case for open source for cloud in ASEAN ally, and hopefully I can find some friends around here. All right, so I said I'd bring friends, and I've got one here, Joshua Cornett, the CTO of OROC. Joshua, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. So,
Cloud in ASEAN ally is ambitious by any understanding of the definition. The government's goal is to migrate 75% of Italian public offices to the cloud by 2025, as I'm certain our audience knows. So it's a big task. And what we want to know is it too ambitious? Are there other examples? And I think you're the right person to let us know how it's been with OROC and your work with the US government. So OROC is the first FedRAMP authorized open source public cloud in the United States. Talk to us about what FedRAMP means and how that's important and pertinent here.
Sure. So when you have a service that that you want either adopted within the government or different departments, or if you want just a trusted marketplace for commercial regulated applications, things like FedRAMP is really what determines what is secure and what other departments or agencies can use without having to do their own big assessment of security and reliability. So FedRAMP is a great starting point. The marketplace, if you have FedRAMP certification, other groups can trust right off the bat. I can use that, no problem. And that's what I think Cloud in ASEAN ally is really trying to accomplish here. Is they're taking these disaggregated applications that are running with different departments, they're serving different areas, different sectors, and trying to kind of bring them under a common baseline of security and interface, and really showing a government-run platform where you can get everything, like things you couldn't get today, such as renewing your health card, your health ID card. So I really see where they're coming from, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic endeavor, and I do not think it is overly ambitious. I think it is achievable. So with OROC, right, having gone through a similar process, we have different data centers around the U.S. That have different levels of certification with FedRAMP or with the DoD, Department of Defense in the U.S. And this allows us to run applications at that level, right? Someone can come to us with an application and say, we must run this in a FedRAMP environment. We must run this in a DoD impact level 2 or 4 environment. And we can say, no problem, we have the infrastructure, come here. And open source is really what has enabled us to do this. With OpenStack and with Ceph, that is the underpinning of our cloud, and that's what's been assessed, and it's what supports literally everything that we offer to customers and what they consume for services. So, I think it's absolutely achievable.
Excellent. That's, you mentioned some parallels that you saw, and we know that the U.S. government entrusts OROC with the data for the National Institute of Health and the U.S. Army. Talk to us about the lessons that you've learned from housing that kind of data and the kind of trust that you feel you've built up with the U.S. government.
Sure, security and reliability, right? That is the fundamentals of being able to continue with these groups. They need a place where they can trust the security. It is verifiable. That's very important, right? They need to not just trust our word on it, right? There needs to be several groups that are attesting to security. And I think Cloud Nazionale will have the same situation. They'll need multiple auditing groups showing to the community and other organizations within the government, hey, this is trustworthy. And then secondly, right, it's uptime, it's services working as expected. It is, our services wing working with them to make sure that they have everything they need to make sure their application is not just moved over, right, because these applications can be quite legacy, but moved to an open source, cloud ready format and architecture so that they are scalable in case a huge influx of users would come in, and resilient in case of failure, which happens in any environment. So yeah, the U.S. Army, the DoD, they entrust us with some of their CI/CD workloads, and some of that process has been us just working with them and saying, look, here's what an open API is, and here's why it's important, and here's why you don't want to get vendor locked, and so on and so forth. It's a learning process that benefits them in the long run.
Interesting. So, we talked about the Army, but the average citizen, they probably don't care about the Army, and they probably maybe care about the National Institute of Health. Let's talk about digital sovereignty and the rights of those citizens. How are you protecting that? And more importantly, why is open source is open source the critical solution to protecting that data? And I kind of will tack on there, hybrid cloud is big. And is there a possibility to coexist between hyperscaler public clouds and open source solutions like OpenStack?
Absolutely. So in terms of data sovereignty and data security, we have this term, security through obscurity, is really not a thing. So just because you aren't showing your hand doesn't mean that you are impervious to being hacked, right? So when I say vendor lock, that's kind of a natural consequence, is if you are with someone that's not open source, no one can really truly trust that the code that's running, it doesn't have major flaws or big security issues because they're in the public, they're audited. Hybrid cloud is sort of a stepping stone, right, where you can process data, let's say on-prem in your OpenStack cloud, or in your VMware environment, or really whatever it is, you do your thing on-prem, and then the things that you need larger processing power for, or huge scalability, or lower price for certain workloads, and you want to trust the security, being on open source software, as well as being through FedRAMP and through DoD accreditations, I think this is the best mixture where you're using flexible open source solutions that are in the public, they're in the clear, there's nothing hidden, as well as being audited for security and resiliency. I think it's the best of both worlds. But hybrid cloud, of course, is a fantastic migratory path. It's a fantastic way to do certain types of workloads, such as big data, where you need data close to you, and then you want to put the results somewhere, something like this. But in general, open source is really, if you want to show the world, especially citizens that are entrusting data to a program, if you want to show them that you are serious about the security, you have to do things in the clear, and you need to have independent groups verifying that what you're doing is secure and correct.
I love it. Open source is the path. So I hope that this has been informative and a bit of extra knowledge for the Cloud Nazi and LA decision. And I really appreciate, Joshua, your time today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So thank you to our partners at Cloudfire, and thank you again to the Salotto 2021 event. I appreciate the opportunity. And don't forget to catch us in Europe for the next OpenInfra Summit in June of 2022. We're very excited to be back in person, and we hope all of you will come and see what open source communities, open design, open development, what that all looks like in person. Thank you so much.
Ringraziamo.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It gave some interesting food for thought. I have to say that I was watching this video. I have watched this video over the last few days, and it tells us that open source Cloud Nazionale, is national cloud, is actually viable, and providing DoD is not an everyday thing to do. Another interesting insight when he's speaking through the hybrid cloud. This is perhaps still an open debate. Of course, we introduce what we have captured, what our experiences. Hybrid cloud is a hybrid towards the cloud itself, but also allowing more clouds to speak to one another. There might be some verticalization that may happen. Maybe a provider will offer it, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an OTT. So national cloud has to be an ensemble of services and tasks and activities where many are grouping together, providing an excellent service. I'd love to run to the next part. Let's see what the audience thinks about it. So proprietary cloud in this case, what advantages do you envisage in a cloud based on proprietary standards? Support availability of skills, code and product stability, vendor reliability, or other. Again, other.
Sarà interessante vedere quali altri ci suggeriscono.
Se ci lasciano qualche commento questa volta, prima non ce n'erano.
Sì, quando selezionate altro potete indicare a che cosa avete pensato e noi lo leggiamo poi subito dopo in diretta. Vedo però che la stabilità...
Well, I do see that stability seems to be a very key topic for everyone. Well, it is very relevant for all of you. And actually, we would expect that open content means greater control and greater security. Although, of course, you would rely on community as well. Well, availability of skills, in my view, is an important asset when it comes to proprietary standards. Information is way more accessible, as well as the knowledge base, experience. And actually, some of the people earlier on were saying they were afraid of lack of support. And still nowadays, it is difficult to come across people who are happy to take on open source world. And actually, we'll be leaving the floor shortly to a speaker who will tell us more about it. Well, we heard that it's very difficult to find average skills. Actually, I'd love to launch a fourth question for our survey. So those of you who said other in terms of what they like of proprietary standards is a variety of services that open source may not cater for. cloud is not just about shifting workload.
Al quarto sondaggio, dove vi...
A fourth question: what disadvantages do you see with a cloud that is based on proprietary standards?
Sì, che poi se ci pensi
Il costo, naturalmente, la dipendenza politica commerciale.
Cost, dependence on the vendor's commercial policies, inability to access the code when there's no transparency, perhaps customization also. So there can't be a single provider for everything, a one-stop shop.
E qui la dipendenza dalle politiche commerciali del vendor è decisamente quello che è più temuto da tutti quanti, quindi...
Dependence on vendors' commercial policies is what everybody seems to be on. Now, a name came to my mind, but I won't make any. Well, the key disadvantage appears to be the dependence on the vendors' commercial policies. Let's see, those 9% of you saying other, what is it that you were thinking about? Lock-in outbound. So not just as you work, but also the outbound. So after speaking through advantages and disadvantages, we'll hear now from Marco Aldinucci, full professor, Computer Science Department, University of Turin. Fabio Monzini, Major Accounting Executive at Akamai. We're asking them something very specific. Well, let's start again from data security, data sovereignty. So what is, in your view, security for users as well as for the operators for a future national cloud that soon will be there? The microphone is off. Speaker's microphone is off. Okay. Well, what we are experiencing as we go through the national cloud is very unique. Now we're very fragmented. All administrations that have made their choice, depending upon the budget, depending upon the strategies they wanted to implement. And this has led to an architecture that had some advantages. When you see fragmentation, it means that there's not a single target that you want to reach out to. But let's say that depending on their scenario, they were all targeting different things. Now, if we're having a single target for everyone, we have to pay attention to what this single target is. So, of course, there has to be a systemic approach in understanding what are the countermeasures that you will adopt. We can be strongly supported by experience gained in local clouds or existing clouds, as well as the experience from cloud providers who have been out there for some time now. On the other side, emerging technologies which are now available on the market. And perhaps I will draw attention to the cyber attacks which are targeting users' applications. So if we're taking public service, public admin, and you have users exposed, well, of course, they would deliver immediate visibility if they are targeted successfully. So when setting that priority, of course, you cannot just consider a national cloud. You have to consider that you want to prevent a malicious activity. If we want to protect a country, army-wise, we are providing weapons to those borders. Well, same will happen to data centers. It's very difficult to identify borders, but there are some technologies that will play this role. Distributed technologies that are able to detect resources and malicious attacks at the moment they're originated and where they are originated. With regards to what you just said, speaking through last generation security, especially within the Cloud Nazionale, as we heard, because we heard from the video. Regarding the edge, is there anything else that you want to add? Perhaps a comment on ransomware or similar? When it comes to the edge, from a security standpoint, we have gained such a greater experience because we have a number of users on edge. So we may develop some interesting real-time rules. When it comes to ransomware, well, recently we've seen public administrations being hit, being affected, and in this case, again, it was a region, and actually we heard a comment this morning, and but actually it might have impacted more than one region, as we heard. But technology has progressed, and some best practices have been developed. We can micro-segment, for instance, and just manage accurately each server, each application, isolate it, and stop the intercommunications amongst the applications so that we always know what's going on inside the network, so that we may apply the countermeasure the very moment that happens. I'd love to ask Aldinucci if we are ready for Cloud Nazionale. He works in an observatory where the future users of Cloud Nazionale are being trained. So what else shall we do to get prepared? Well, thank you so much for the kind invite, first of all. Yes, I do work in a faculty at the University of Turin. But I remember back in 2017, we introduced a HPC for AI data center with an OpenStack cloud. I don't know whether that was, well, it was a big investment, let me say, 5 million euro. It was quite an investment. So what are we now doing with that system at university? Well, first of all, we introduced it. We launched the data center, and we've been awarded here in Milan for what we have established. So we've been rewarded for our data center.
Studenti come si progettano le cose.
And we teach our students how things can be designed. There's no strategy you can fine-tune unless you have people developing it in the first place. And sooner or later we will get there, because it is often we don't have the relevant people in place to do the right configuration. Our OpenStack has been there for 22 months, and there are RVM that have been open for 22 months. And meanwhile, we have updated the OpenStack without turning them off. And this is what I want to teach my students, as I want to train people. Just like Claudia, she just left my laboratory and she's now leading OpenShift for IBM. I want them to have a clear mind how things have to be done. And perhaps they've tested it because they have taken care of many deployments, not just one, but many. Well, they'd say it's a completely different story. So a laboratory, well-equipped laboratory, is needed so that it may shape and it may deliver skills. And that is exactly what we are trying to do. We're not in the market. I mean, our market are the market of skills. We train skills. We train for skills. So much difficult to find and detect. And congratulations from my side. So open source equal not stable. Well, you're actually now confirming of such maturity and stability of open source, right? Yes. And actually, I would have phrased the question differently. Why should one connect to proprietary code where if you use open source, you have a community of 100,000 people working for you free of charge, keeping the code stable and up to speed. So I don't see the reason why. Well, there are perhaps some passionate people around open source who can only approve what you're saying. Yes, very true. We have no skills, but we do have real life examples here of people who can train on these skills. Open source is not the only world available, but for sure, it can actually develop a full economy or research or new investigation, because we keep researching in IT as well. Do you agree? Of course, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. And my idea on Cloud Nazionale, on the national cloud, is that, well, because I have heard also from Luca Tias, he said many times, we do have a technology divide, and that has to be filled. Yes, of course, I do agree on that. There is a gap out there, but we have to be brave enough to kind of segment the market. We do have services and commodities out there. How about I make an agreement with an OTT, and then I will get that service? But while I'm doing so, I have to be bold enough to make the right investment to bridge that that gap. Otherwise, it's just the case of face masks. Well, there's nobody manufacturing face masks. You realize the minute you need them. Well, we don't want that to happen anymore, So many people, so many countries who have been hit by the Android story, well, they're now currently working on it. They're making efforts on that. Well, they want to be ready to react to the next threat, to the next attack. And now, when talking to providers, they can also have a debate around pricing. We heard about the value chain this morning. It's not just stainless steel, but also IT value chain that it need to be reconsidered. Well, a big slice of the market that really deserves an investment. I mean, it's so clear for us to see. I'm not sure whether it will deliver huge business, but it is an important investment, and it's trying to grab some perhaps different chunks. I don't know, healthcare data and army data. So why don't we just invest those extra €2 per each person per capita? That might be helpful, for our national security, more broadly speaking.
And the companies that are here could make business models. You can do it very well. We at the university cannot. So I'd like to thank our guests and the organizers for allowing us to talk about Cloud Nazionale with interesting food for thought from Jimmy MacArthur, Akamai, the University of Turin with Aldinucci, and thank you all for listening to us.